Hello and welcome to today's podcast from FD Capital. I'm Adrian Lawrence and today I'm talking about the living wage. FD Capital Recruitment are a London-based finance director and CFO recruitment boutique. We're based in Great Portland Street and have been running for just over 3 years now. And we're a dynamic organisation focused on London and the South East. But also we have national and some international roles as well. Our model is to place finance directors and CFOs with founders. Often they're PE-backed or VC-backed technology businesses, but not exclusively. So the living wage, historically there'd been quite a lot of concerns in the finance community about the living wage. This was brought in quite some time now, and gradually different governments have been increasing the national living wage gradually. And central government has decided on a target of 66% of median wages, and they've taken that decision because that's an international measure of poverty. People living below 66% of average wage are deemed to be in poverty of some extent, and those above are not. So clearly it makes sense for that target, and it's set each year, so as that median salaries and wages rise, the living wage will rise accordingly. So that's the national background. And the Living Wage Foundation is an organisation, not-for-profit organisation, which seeks to publicise the value and benefits of paying a living wage. And the reason we're talking about this today is this month FD Capital Recruitment has joined the Living Wage Foundation. So we really buy into the concept of elimination of poverty at work. We support the concept of a living wage nationally, and the Living Wage Foundation's London rate is £10.85. So we've adopted that as our lowest possible earnings rate, and it did affect one employee who's had a pay rise accordingly. So we've taken positive action, and we support it. I guess our observation is that the way things are going with central government, it may well be that the London rate is the same as the national living wage, because the Living Wage Foundation's UK rate is £9.50, and for the current year. And the government has just announced in the budget that the living wage nationally will increase to £9.50 from next year. So it's getting very, very close to that rate. The Living Wage Foundation will be revising the rate next year, so it's not quite there. But the progression is to reach 66% of earnings by 2024. So it's going to synchronise pretty soon. So we're extremely positive about this development. Support the Living Wage Foundation, and actually you can now, searching on their website this morning, you can now see our logo on the list of champions and employers who pay and are committed to the living wage. So that's absolutely a good story. And similarly, we support the elimination of pensioner poverty. And really that's through the auto-enrolment process. In the UK we have two pensions, the state one which is linked to national insurance contributions, and you get a full state pension which is linked to earnings and inflation once you've made 35 years of contributions. But there's a secondary pension which is contributory by employers and employees through payroll, and that's currently 5% employer contribution and 3% employee contribution on a band of earnings, which is basically earnings over 10,000. So that does provide a pension, and considering the UK started with no compulsory pension contributions for a lot of employees, that has given them a private pension for the first time in their lives. So that's extremely positive. But the actual replacement level of contributions, how much you'd actually need to contribute to a pension to give you something like 66% of your earnings in your sort of average earnings as you approach retirement when you retire, the contribution rate is something in the range of 12% to 16% of total earnings, and it does vary depending on at what age you start the pension and what funds etc. you invest in, and that's sort of an average. So the contribution levels are really a long way short, because that range I quoted is of total earnings, not the band of earnings. So there's some way to go to increase the contribution levels to a point where everybody's got a sufficient private pension. And of course you've got to have paid into it your whole working life to get a decent pension at the end. So it's not going to eliminate pensioner poverty in the short term, but in 40 years time, when everyone's been contributing for a working life, that will make a huge difference at that point. So we support an increase in those contributions levels. Our feeling is it needs to be something like 6 to 8% employers' contribution and 6 to 8% employee contribution. So the employee contribution's not too far off it, but employer contribution are a long way away, a long way adrift at the moment. And that needs to be phased in over time, and the threshold payment level needs to be abolished again over a period of time to allow employers to adjust. And once that's done, in the long term, that will be transformational for the UK pensioner landscape and quality of life and earnings. So we're a big supporter of that, and we feed into consultations on the low pay commission, and when there are consultations on auto-enrolment, we'll feed our views in on that as well. So what we're trying to explain is FD Capital has a social conscience. We believe in equality and a good living standard for all. We think that's affordable as employers are given opportunity to adapt to change, and the fact that unemployment has fallen, even though living wage and auto-enrolment contributions have risen, shows that it is manageable and can be balanced, provided it's spread over a reasonable period of time. So if you're looking to work for a socially engaged recruitment service, a boutique who's specialised in founders, technology and PE-backed, VC-backed businesses, particularly in London, then please consider working with FD Capital Recruitment. Our website is www.fdcapital.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We're well known as a great friendly team, and we've got some superb candidates, many of which are available for an immediate start. So please reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening.